Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Usually before we come on and that music plays, I'm always swaying. And then I stop with my little dance when I come on camera. Not today, okay? I'm going to dance like no one's watching. Welcome to Undivided. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up on the show today, the city of Seattle has finally passed an ordinance that will allow police officers to arrest people, maybe, for open-air drug use and open-air drug possession. I guess that's the thing, for drug possession in general. The question really is, though, is it going to be effective? Are police even going to utilize the new law? We'll discuss both of those points, and we're going to take you inside the chaos in yesterday's Seattle City Council meeting where the typical pro-crime, anti-police activists tried to shame council members into de facto legalizing or allowing drugs to continue to be legalized in the city of Seattle. So we're going to take you inside all of that. Also, a program that was set up as a savior for Seattle's unsheltered has folded. We'll talk about all the money that went into it that has been wasted. Later on, our friend Jason Rantz is out with a new book. It's called What's Killing America. He's going to join us to talk about it. And I'm also going to ask him about a controversial Seattle police body camera video that we talked about on the show last week and his opinion on what is being seen in that footage. All of that and more coming up. But first, if you have not become an Undivided subscriber already, please do so. Help support our mission and our movement to give common sense a comeback. You can sign up for $5 a month at undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. All right, let's start in the city of Seattle. We previewed this a little bit on the show yesterday, but Seattle is ground zero for the fentanyl crisis. There is no question. There is no other place in the state. And look, it's the biggest city. I'm not saying that that's a particular surprise, but the policies in Seattle that have been really in place for, I would say, the better part of a decade. I mean, Seattle has never been a city that was throwing the book at people who are downtown using drugs out in the open. That's not something that's new in the last year or two. But now we have drugs that are far more deadly than they were 10 years ago. Now we're dealing with fentanyl. We're dealing with tranq. You know, we went from the heroin crisis into this crisis. And we are at the forefront, not only across the state, but nationally, when it comes to the uptick in overdoses and deaths from fentanyl. So throughout all of that, the state lawmakers had, delayed on putting a new law on the book to criminalize drug possession after our old law got ruled unconstitutional. And then Seattle was just twiddling its thumbs all summer as people were dying. Was not, they voted down a common sense ordinance that would have allowed police to pursue those cases and arrest on those cases as misdemeanors. And now they spent the months since trying to come up with some sort of compromise that would appease the, what I consider pro-drug use, pro-overdose crowd, because I don't know how else to frame it. So yesterday in the city council, they passed on a vote of 6-3 this watered down drug use ordinance. And what it does is it's a misdemeanor to use or possess drugs in public. But police also have to believe before they make an arrest that you pose a danger to others. And we still do not know what that threshold is going to be. We still have no idea. And so to me, the idea that you would have to prove, if you want to arrest someone for using drugs, that they're also a danger to others, which to me would be an underlying different crime entirely. One, it's a threshold that we don't even know what it is. Two, we don't even have enough police officers to enforce these misdemeanors. They're trying to chase down people who are being shot at record levels. And three, you're going to put discretion on police in an issue that you say is resulting in race-based outcomes. And you're supposed to believe that police are going to be like, sure, I'll do that. I'll make the judgment as to whether someone should be arrested for drug use or possession because, the city council is totally not going to turn around and throw me under the bus and call me racist for who I decide to arrest and who I don't. So there are a lot of issues with it. That being said, it's better than nothing. It's better than no ordinance on the books, I guess. You just take whatever silver lining you can get. But I had to laugh at the same old tired, whiny activists who showed up at Seattle City Council chambers to try to push back against this. I don't understand what motivates these people. I'm going to play a couple clips. So our friend Jonathan Cho was in council chambers. And again, these are the same, I was looking at his video, these are the same people who have been showing up to council meetings, pushing back against common sense policies for the better part of a decade. So anyway, you'll hear in this clip some activists who'd gathered toward the back of the room, and this is as the vote is taking place, and they're, trying to convince these council members to change their vote at the last minute by saying they have blood on their hands, and then they're hissing at the ones who aren't voting the way they want them to vote.
You can still vote no.
People are gonna die.
Councilmember Strauss.
Yes.
Yes.
Children. I want to note, though, before I play this next clip, that you heard, the activists, oh, people are going to die. People are already dying. People are dying at record levels. This narrative from what I really believe is a small fringe of even Seattle's political class. This fringe that believes that allowing what's happening right now to continue to happen is what's empathetic and is somehow saving lives. And that arresting someone, the argument they make is if you arrest them and put them in jail, they could overdose in jail, or they're more likely to overdose when they get out. And it's like, people are already overdosing. They're already dying, more so in Washington State and Seattle at a greater rate than any place in the country. And you're accusing council members who want to try to have some sort of intervention, which, by the way, begins with offers of diversion. You hissing at them and saying that people are going to die if they do this. I can come to no other conclusion than you want people to die of overdoses. Those activists, do they have some sort of ulterior motive where they actually do want people to die of overdoses on the streets? Because that's what they're pushing for. I don't get it. So let's continue that video. After this past 6-3, here's the scene inside City Council chambers.
What a day. Great career, Lisa Herbold. Great career. Congratulations, Council.
You're welcome. Congratulations, Birds. Congratulations. Next time. Blood on your hand.
Lisa, you did so much good stuff in 8 years. You're going to end it like this? You did so much good for the community. You're going to end it like this? This is your last thing you're going to do?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. There's a few thoughts I have. I've been in so many council meetings over the years where that same crowd and similar people are, causing a scene, and they think that they can get council members to vote their way by yelling loud enough, by swearing enough, by shouting them down. And the sad part is they do that because it has worked. It has worked a lot over the years, where they come in there and they scream and they make a scene and they try to paint the council members as evil, awful people, and they label them in an attempt to force them, to guilt them, to scare them into voting their way. And unfortunately, it has worked a lot in Seattle. That's why we're in the situation we're in, is we've had council members for so long that have kowtowed to just a small, far left activist fringe. And so the fact that they didn't, at least in this one instance, is good, because I really believe that one of the keys to getting Seattle back on track is to get reasonable progressives and reasonable liberal Democrats to realize that there is about 20 to 50 activist voices in Seattle that have an outsized influence. And the vast majority of Seattleites want common sense measures on public safety. They want there, and the polls bear this out, they want there to be laws and enforcement on the books when it comes to illicit drug use. They want there to be a harder line approach on clearing unauthorized homeless encampments. But for some reason, part of it's because you've got these people who are able to show up in the middle of the day on a weekday to a council meeting, and a lot of hardworking individuals in Seattle who do care about public safety, who do want their neighborhoods to be more safe. They can't take time off work to come in at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. So that's part of the issue as well, and why they have this outsized voice, and they pack council chambers and they try to pack public testimony. So there's this disproportionate feeling that this super small fringe represents even a small part of what Seattleites feel and think. So it goes back to, I think, one of the reasons we do this show is we want to give reasonable people in the middle more of a voice. And we want to show that the fringes on the left and the right aren't even close to the majority. And that takes reasonable people speaking out. It's hard to get reasonable people to pack council chambers in the middle of a weekday. So anyway, they're calling them murderers and saying they have blood on their hands. I don't know if there is any ideology that has been more dangerous and more destructive and led to more deaths than the ideology of those activists. The anti-police, pro-crime ideology, the people who are pushing and yelling to defund police, vilifying police, the people who are supporting things like the Capitol Hill Occupy protest, the people who will defend rioting in Seattle and violent behavior if it's done in the pursuit of social justice, the people who want basically de facto legalization of drugs. You're the people who have blood on your hand. You're the quote-unquote murderers. You're the people who don't care about the sanctity of human life. Now, I have a lot of qualms with members of the Seattle City Council. I'm glad that they voted for this yesterday, but I will defend them against unreasonable activists who, whine and shout and swear and scream when they don't get their way. I'm very glad they didn't get their way this time. That being said, and we'll talk about it later on the show when our friend Jason Rantz joins us, it remains to be seen whether this ordinance in Seattle will do anything, whether it can be enforced, whether police want to enforce it, want to put themselves out on a limb like that, and whether when these individuals who are arrested, whether they are diverted right away into a system that isn't going to have any accountability for whether they get off the drugs that they're on. I'm not going to hold my breath that people are actually going to do any sort of jail time over these things in a way that I think could be meaningful in changing their lives. So a little follow-up on that. But why this is so important, and I think it's a good kind of aside when we talk about overdose numbers, the Seattle Fire Department, you would not believe the number of calls that maybe you would believe it. The number of calls they're responding to related to overdoses. Chief Harold Scoggins talked about it during a city press conference.
Current Seattle fire overdose data reads like this. We're going on about 15 a day, a little bit over 15 overdoses a day. Now, to put that in perspective, so far this year, we have responded to over 4,000 overdoses of all kind. And once again, to ground you a little bit more, all of 22, we responded to just over 3,700. So we're in September, mid-September, we're over 4,000. And we've already exceeded 2022's number significantly. In 2021, we had about 1,700. So the problem is getting bigger, and it's important to deploy resources to help with that.
Yeah. And I'm not going to bother talking about the program they were up discussing because I have yet to see a program that the city of Seattle has implemented that's making a bit of a difference. Although it's weird. We played a clip yesterday of Andrew Lewis bragging about how our law enforcement assisted diversion program for drug users and drug addicts is a model across the entire world. And I'm like, well, that's scary to think about. But the numbers don't lie in terms of this crisis that we're in. And for people who want to suggest that, Seattle has substantially changed how it deals with drug addicts and drug offenders over the years, that's just not true. I mean, I remember going back to, when the former city attorney Pete Holmes was in office. I remember doing a ride along with an officer in downtown Seattle. This is probably 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. And I remember that officer, we go through the alleyway, right? And there's this guy who, it might have been meth at the time. This is before the fentanyl crisis that we're in. And it's just blowing smoke out of this pipe right in front of the officer. And the officer goes to me, we're not going to arrest him. Pete Holmes isn't going to charge him anyway. And so Seattle has never had, as long as I've been here, in recent history, a quote unquote war on drugs. Seattle has been a progressive place for a very long time. So the idea that these activists say that implementing a very, very weak law that is a misdemeanor, where you have a substantial burden of proof before you can even arrest someone, that they have to also be a danger to others. And then even if they are a danger to others and you arrest them, you have to go with diversion first. The idea that that amounts to a war on drugs it's unhinged. It's not in line with reality. But also it is encouraging the city of Seattle to continue down a trajectory that all the data shows will continue to lead to more deaths. Nicole pulled the latest data from the King County Health Department. And I mean, the graphs show exactly what's happening in a very visual way when it comes to the average weekly number of overdose deaths. Overdose deaths, people actually dying. You see how significantly that has increased from 2019. It's insane. And then you look at the drug types. And from 2012, fentanyl accounting for virtually none. And now it just overtaking all the other drugs combined, between like benzos and cocaine and heroin and meth and opioids. And fentanyl we know is so, so deadly. And so you have to, for the activists, I really am trying to put myself in their minds of what would be the motivation. What would be the motivation for them to want to continue to do things the way that we've been doing it? You have to want people to die. You have to be okay with people dying. And that sounds actually like a very libertarian perspective to me. I mean, the reason I'm not full-blown libertarian is in part because of their views on drugs and decriminalizing drugs, because I understand that drug use, personal drug use, doesn't happen in a vacuum. And we see that in the city of Seattle, right? If you're using drugs, is a high likelihood that you're burning through cash to try to get those drugs. I mean, I always use this comparison when I talk about this, because it's not just poor people who are drug addicts who then have to find a way to fund their drug habit, and that is stealing from others, etc. But even that rich guy who allegedly, is he convicted now, killed his family down in the South, who was burning, he had like a $50,000 a month cocaine habit, and that's why he was stealing money from people. So, if drug users weren't ever impacting anyone else, and they only use drugs in a little room, a little shack, and they shut themselves in the shack, and that's where they use drugs, and that's where they lived, and they didn't go out in society at all, then yeah, I'd be like, yeah, decriminalize drugs. They're doing what they want to do with their lives. I'm in full support of their freedom and liberty, and if that's how they want to go, then by all means. But clearly that's not the case. Clearly there are societal implications as well. And so for the activists who just want that to continue, I don't truly understand what the motivation would be other than you're okay with people dying. And you're okay with people being victimized up to the point where that person eventually dies from the drugs that they're putting into their body. It's insane, and it truly screws you up in your brain, because they believe they're the empathetic ones. They believe that they have the moral high ground. It's crazy. And that's why we do this show, where we can all understand that that's not the case, that they don't have the moral high ground, that they are not empathetic, that they don't value human life. And valuing human life is to put appropriate guardrails on behavior so that individuals aren't hurting other people and they're not dying on our streets and on our sidewalks. All right, coming up next in our segment, Unbelievable, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority is just the gift that keeps on giving. And by the gift that keeps on giving, I mean they keep on giving other people's money to people to pay bloated government salaries. We'll talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. But first, we've been talking about our friend Wes Jones, a wonderful real estate agent in our area. If you're considering selling your home, visit sellwithwes.com. Check out their home value calculator. You can plug in your address, see how much your home might be worth. So that's a good starting point. But also, I recommend, if you need work done on your home before you put it on the market to make sure that you get the best possible offers, Wes and his team have something called the Listing Boost Concierge Service, where they'll come in, they'll help you manage those projects, they'll even maybe pay for it up front if you need. Susan in Federal Way is a wonderful example of what they can do. She sold her home with Wes Jones after living in it for 25 years.
I knew I had to paint. I knew I needed to get new flooring. I needed to get new lighting. I told him up front that I was very interested, that I did not have the time or the finances to do what needed to be done. And he immediately jumped in with, well, I do. Work started immediately. And I would say in 2 to 3 weeks, they had landscaping done. They had all the painting done. The new floors were put in. All the lighting was put in. It just was all so fast. And the rest is history. It was on the market for 7 days. I was able to get well over listing price.
To be specific, Susan got 20 offers, sold it for 15% over list price, and ended up getting $200,000 more than an investor offered her before the renovations. Yeah, and imagine if Susan hadn't called Wes Jones. She would have sold it to some guy who wanted to flip it, and she would be $200,000 poorer, which we don't want. So if you're in the market to sell your home, check out a few real estate agents, but make sure that you check out Wes Jones & Associates at sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. A program that was sold to us and sold to a lot of rich people in Seattle as the end-all, be-all for homelessness has officially folded. Let's get to it in our segment, Unbelievable. By now, there's pretty universal agreement that the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has been a failure. I mean, from Democrats, from Republicans, from all sorts of folks who have been paying attention to what's happening in the city of Seattle, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has just not worked. And it has been this incredible boondoggle and a waste of money and hundreds of millions of dollars. And their very first CEO, Mark Dones, resigned. He claimed he was burnt out, but it came after all these headlines about how he couldn't even help the agency function well enough to do basic things like pay their contractors who were doing the bulk of the actual difficult work. So, there have been Seattle Times, I think, op-eds where it's like, what has the Homelessness Authority accomplished? What is it even doing? So again, this is not a partisan talking point. This is a pretty universally agreed upon thing that the Regional Homelessness Authority needs a complete reevaluation. And this story is just further proof of that. So do you guys remember something called Partnership for Zero? Partnership for Zero. So when Partnership for Zero was announced as something that was going to be handled by King County Regional Homelessness Authority, people were thrilled. They were like, this is it. This is going to fix everything. And so much so, it was called Partnership for Zero because they brought in a lot of private funding. It was a public-private partnership. We're going to come in, all these resources, all these rich companies, and we're going to fix things. I just pulled a few of the little clips of what was said about it at the time that it launched. It was called an extraordinary collaboration to dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness in targeted areas of King County. The Schultz Family Foundation, which invested in it, said new Partnership for Zero collaboration launches to dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness in downtown Seattle with support from cross-sector funders. Now, keep in mind, this launched in February of 2022. This is Capitol Hill Seattle blog. Big givers launched $10 million Partnership for Zero to, quote, dramatically reduce unsheltered homelessness in downtown Seattle. So that was, what, a year and a half ago? And at the time, King 5, wow, they had a headline that made people just, woo! I can't believe it. This could be the solution. King 5's headline, February 2020, new partnership could shelter all currently homeless individuals in downtown Seattle in as fast as 12 months. Wow. Yeah. And of course, with headlines like that, why wouldn't all these rich woke corporations just dump money into it? Like, hey, if this is going to shelter all the people who are homeless in downtown Seattle within 12 months, then yeah, sign us up. What's good for Seattle is good for us. It's good for the economy. So corporations just jumped at the opportunity to be part of Partnership for Zero. Alaska Airlines, Amazon, Ballmer Group, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Boeing, Costco, Expedia, JP Morgan Chase, Microsoft, Nordstrom's, Puget Sound Energy, REI, Russell Investments, Schultz Family Foundation, Starbucks, T-Mobile, Weyerhaeuser, Zillow, you name it. They were like, we want to be part of this. Take our money, King County Regional Homelessness Authority. Take our money for this Partnership for Zero. Well, let's check in on the Partnership for Zero a year and a half later, right? King 5 told us in a headline that the program could make all unhoused people have shelter in a year. It's been more than a year. So, Nicole, can you check in on the website for Partnership Zero? How are things going? Oh, not well. They posted an update on the King County Regional Homelessness Authority site saying that they are going to have to fold their Partnership for Zero program and lay off members of the Partnership for Zero team. They wrote in this update, since the departure of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority's first CEO, the agency has been conducting a full assessment of operations. This work includes a review of our governance structure and a close look at our operations and programs, including Partnership for Zero. Initial funding for the pilot program has now expired. In addition, King County Regional Homelessness Authority and partners recognize that the need for unsheltered services in downtown Seattle and the Chinatown ID is greater than the capacity of the Partnership for Zero pilot. We also recognize that there are challenges in having an administrative agency deliver direct service. King County Regional Homelessness Authority is winding down the Partnership for Zero pilot program. Unfortunately, this means we must also lay off members of the Partnership for Zero team. So after just a year and a half, a program that was billed to all of us as something that could get every unsheltered person off the streets of downtown Seattle in just a year is no more. And of course, that means that all the money that went into it was for nothing. And they're going to pitch it as, oh, but we had these little victories along the way. No, you sold it to us as something that would be transformational. That's how you sold it to these companies that bought in. Shame on them for believing that giving their money to the government would result in anything except that money going to waste, because that's all the government does. That's the homeless industrial complex. We've had plenty of examples of that. The best use of private funds is in the hands of the private sector. I don't know why the people who are already overtaxed would ever willingly give more money to the government to squander on an issue that they have perpetually squandered it on. And our friend Ari Hoffman looked at the amount of money that King County Regional Homelessness Authority had dedicated to at least salaries. So administration and direct services budget. So of the Regional Homelessness Authority's budget, they had dedicated 25.4% of money for salaries to Partnership for Zero, to the tune of $4,743,461. Absolutely down the drain, because it didn't even do a fraction of what it promised it would do. And that's not to mention the millions of dollars that private entities, bewildering, gave to the government to try to fix a problem the government has proven incapable of fixing. Absolutely unbelievable. All right, coming up next, we're going to dip outside of Washington State later on. We'll also hear after this from our friend Jason Rantz. He's got a new book coming out in a couple days, but we also want to talk to him about some stories that have been in the news. But first, we've been talking about our friends at First Mark Insurance, and I've been encouraging you to take the First Mark Challenge, as Mike and I did. Here's what it entails. You go to firstmarkinsurance.com, you sign up to take the First Mark Challenge, and then you spend a little bit of time, we did it virtually, talking to First Mark Insurance about your current insurance, about your insurance needs. They go out, they shop the market for you for free, and then they come back with recommendations. And you might be thinking, Brandi, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to do that. But here's the thing. When you do it once, and then if you decide to become a member of the First Mark family, I am not being sarcastic, I'm not being hyperbolic, you never have to worry about your insurance coverage ever again. Here's Dave Taylor. He's the CEO of First Mark.
I've been doing this 35 years, and when I see things like the company that has a name your price tool, that scares the crap out of me, right? Because what are they going to name? I want cheap, right? And I got insurance, and it's good, and it's all good until you need it. And then when you need it, it's really not worth anything, right? So I just think this conversation, I don't care if it took 5 hours, it's worth it. And it's not a conversation you have to have ever again, because now for you and Mike, now that you're part of the First Mark family, right? We have a team that's going to be reviewing your account every year. And if we think there's a change that needs to be made, or we need to move to a different company, we're going to do all that work internally and get back out to you and say, hey, Brandi, we think we need to move you from company A to company B. And it's just going to be that. You don't have to spend that time ever again. It's just on the front end that you make that investment to make sure you've got the right coverage. And then from then it's easy.
I love it. Completely worry-free. And then you have a company that's working for you around the clock, so you don't have to worry about your insurance. And yes, I realize that I inappropriately use the word sarcastic. I said I'm not trying to be sarcastic. That was the wrong use of the word sarcastic. It just is the word that popped into my mind, but I knew people would say something on the live chat. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. Take the First Mark Challenge. First Mark Insurance, they work for you. All right, did you know that our friend Jason Rantz, a host at 770 KTTH in Seattle, he hosts the Jason Rantz Show weekly. He's also a frequent face on Fox News. He's out with a new book. It's called What's Killing America? Inside the Radical Left's Tragic Destruction of Our Cities. It's available for pre-order right now, just about anywhere you get your books. And it's officially coming out this Tuesday. Jason was nice enough to join us on the show today to talk about some issues that have been in the news, but also to talk about what you can expect if you read his book. Jason Rantz, welcome back to Undivided.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
World's greatest friend delaying his book tour for my wedding.
It's true.
Are you actually delaying
I decided
it for my
to
wedding?
Push it.
Or do you?
Yes, I 100% delayed it. I was going to leave on Friday night, and then we pushed it to early Sunday morning.
That is so nice. I seem to recall.
That's my gift to you.
Wow, yes. Well, your presence is a gift. So, yes, I do appreciate that. Well, we'll talk about the book coming up. But since I have you here, I've got to talk to you about some of the news that's happening because there's just so much of it. The Seattle City Council yesterday passed this, watered down version of a drug possession ordinance. Do you think it's going to make a difference?
No, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. Now, it is a step in the right direction. It's sending a message, at least, that we're not just going to accept open air drug use. And I certainly, give them credit for that, because I know that particularly Lisa Herbold is in a position where she probably didn't want to have to tick off anyone in the far right or far left crowd. And I'm not going to give any credit to Dan Strauss or Andrew Lewis. We're only doing this for political purposes. But at the end of the day, you've got a few problems. Number one, it's still guaranteed pre-diversion when that's not going to work for a lot of people. And when you decide to do that on someone we know it's not going to work on, you're just giving them more time to get into a fatal overdose. Number two, once you actually do get to the point of being able to make an arrest, we don't have enough cops to do any of this work. So to think that all of a sudden something's going to change dramatically is just naive. Good first step, but only a first step.
And when you talk about, the way that they changed it, which is essentially that not only does this person have to be using drugs in the open or possessing drugs illegally, but also have to be a danger to others. Do we really know what that threshold is?
No, we don't. And let's be clear, there are parts of this that still rely on policies that have yet to be written. An executive order from the mayor that hasn't actually yet been really written. Maybe there's an outline somewhere, but that's about it. So this idea that you have to be a threat to others, how do you determine that? I would argue that if you're someone who's coming off of a high and you're mentally ill, that makes you inherently a threat. Do we have to wait until someone assaults someone else? So it is ludicrous. And again, at the end of the day, no matter what an officer ends up doing, there's going to be extra scrutiny in either direction. They're either going to blame the officer for not getting involved soon enough because of their own rules, or the opposite. You got involved too soon. This is criminalizing addiction from people who don't care about the folks who are suffering. Let's be clear. The folks who showed up yesterday at the meeting and were yelling all this invective towards the council, they do not care. These are the radical left activists that I write about in my book, What's Killing America. They are not interested in policies that actually help everyone. They are driven purely by their ideology. And they are killing people. So it was ironic for them to scream, blood on your hands. No, quite the opposite.
Well, yeah, that's what we played a clip earlier in the show of one of them yelling, people are going to die. And I thought, people are already dying at record numbers from overdoses. What do you mean people are going to die? Just on the police front, it seems like it's an unwinnable situation for police when it comes to them having to make some discretionary call about whether to arrest people for this. Have you heard from any officers? Because I imagine officers will just not enforce the ordinance.
I mean, most officers that I've spoken to specifically about this, they say it's not going to do anything. We're still not going to really be able to police. There's still too many other crimes going on that are violent in nature that demand an immediate response. And so the idea that they're going to be able to proactively police in downtown Seattle is just ludicrous. Now, will the city, for maybe a month after it goes into effect, do some priority sweeps within the maybe just to send a message, just to make a point, and again step in the right direction, but that's not going to be sustained. Anyone who's gone to downtown Seattle, you can tell it's already starting to creep back to where it was when we had to do that big old whatever they were calling their sweep several months ago at the corner of 3rd and Pine. It's just we're headed back in that same direction because we don't really have a plan. The mayor loves to talk about, my office is working on a plan. Oh, don't worry, my office is hard at work on a plan. We're going to get you that plan in a couple of weeks. Please don't follow up on that, and hopefully you'll forget. And then the media generally doesn't follow up. Not everyone. Some in the media actually are doing, I think, a really good job on this in more of the corporate media world. I think Jeremy Harris, for example, at Como, I think is doing a really, really good job. But we need more people like that to actually step forward, because it can't just be you and I doing this. We need some other support.
Yeah, and I'll give credit to Jonathan Cho as well, who's been out there.
Cho is doing great.
Documenting all this. One other topical story. You were the first to break news of the existence of a body camera video from a Seattle police officer who was called to the scene to help investigate this fatal collision where a police officer earlier this year struck and killed a college student on his way to an emergency call. Just to set it up for people who aren't familiar with the context, this Officer Otterer, is also the vice president of the Seattle Police Union. So it's basically a body camera video that shows him, or, you can hear him on the phone with the president of the police union. And he said some stuff that comes across as very heartless when it comes to what happened to this young woman.
But she is dead. No, it's a regular person. Yeah. Yeah, just write a check. Just, yeah, $11,000. She was 26 anyway. She had limited value.
So you initially broke the story based on a complaint he kind of filed against himself. So it was really from his perspective, believing the phone call was taken out of context. Now, having seen the video, who do you believe?
Oh, I still believe him. I mean, he's very clearly responding to something. And I do think it matches up with the way people generally have conversations when mocking other people who are dismissing the value of life. There's no indication in that video that he was personally talking about his stance. You can disagree with how he joked about it or how he mocked the lawyers at the city level. I think that that is totally appropriate, and that's on him for accidentally having his body camera on. But I'm not going to pretend that he was personally making these judgments and mocking her, because he very clearly was not, based on that video. There is this general misunderstanding for anyone who works as a first responder, and frankly, anyone who works in the media, because these kinds of conversations that taken out of context will sound really bad. You have to compartmentalize. You can't treat every single incident where someone is dead taking it so personally that you're not able to do your job and cope emotionally with all of this trauma around you. And if that sounds like an excuse for some folks, okay, fine. And then it's an excuse for some folks. Talk to doctors, talk to prosecutors, talk to others who work around trauma all the time. This is one of the ways that they cope. It might be politically incorrect. You might not like it. And certainly we don't want it to happen all the time, certainly not in public. But making a joke about lawyers who are in fact getting together in a room trying to place a lower value on the victim's life so they don't have to pay any money out or as much money as they otherwise should. That's what's going on right now. If you want to defend that practice, go for it. But don't just go after cops. And let's be clear about some of the activism that we've seen on the street. There are some of it that is done in good faith. There's a lot of it that is not. These are the people from the defund movement and the abolitionist movement. These are Shama Sawant lunatics who are out there talking about how this is actually capitalism at fault. This is colonialism at fault. We have to defund the police and abolish. Those people don't really care about the victim. And now you throw in this added piece that we're now going to pretend that Dan Otterer was mocking this victim because she's Indian, which he did not know. He did not know anything about her, including a name. He only knew an age, which he ended up getting wrong, by the way, and gender. That's it. That's all he knew. He wasn't actually at the scene either, which people seem to think that he was. So that all of a sudden we're now pretending that this is about ethnicity or race and xenophobia. I mean, you can tell where these people are coming from, and it's not the best interest of the community. It's because they hate cops.
Yeah, I agree with you on some of that for sure. I mean, I think a lot of activists they'll look for any opportunity to try to go out and spread hatred for police. I just have a hard time, though, with how definitive that you are about what the video shows, because I don't know what's being said on the other side of that phone call. I mean, doesn't your interpretation of it mean that you have to take the president of the guild and the vice president of the guild at their word about what was being said?
Well, yes, in part, for sure. The same way that folks on the other side are assuming that it was 100% incorrect. Yeah. We all have our viewpoints. We all have our biases. I don't hide the fact that I'm pro-cop. And I think part of the reason why maybe I'm perceived as being too hardcore on this particular story is because I understand that there are 99% of the media and the activist class are always going to frame things against police officers. I'm not okay with that. I think officers do tremendous work in this city, despite working in really, really poor communities with poor support. So I'm going to support them unless I think that did something egregious. And I don't think there was any ill intent here. Do I think it's a bad look? 100% it is a bad look. And again, he says it in his own complaint letter and this rapid adjudication. Let's also not pretend that the way that this story even got out there doesn't play a role in the intent of the framing. This was leaked. It was intentionally leaked. There was a reporter at the Times who put in a very specific public disclosure request after this got to OPA. And I've talked to two people already, two sources who say OPA gave it to the CPC. He told me himself, Gino Betts, the head of OPA, that he didn't tell me directly. When I asked him, okay, did you talk to anyone with CPC? Well, I can't get into that. He's the one who put it out there according to my sources. I think that was done with intent.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of motivations, like you said, a lot of bias going around. I mean, I just have a hard time forming a strong opinion about the story beyond that sounds really bad, because I just don't, unless Mike Solon is on the record, the president of the Guild, saying, here's exactly what I was saying on the other side of that phone call, then I just can't form an opinion about whether it was, whether he had ill intent or, like he said, a bad heart.
Yeah, and I think it's clear because he's the one who put out the statement last week that included the rapid adjudication complaint that Otterer sent out. I'm going to assume that if that wasn't an accurate reflection of the phone call, he probably would not have put that out in the way that he did. We'll get that document. I don't know if he's done his interview yet with OP. I'm assuming he has, or if he hasn't, it's going to be relatively quickly. That information will come out. I do think at the end of the day, it's important for the context to be considered. How you come to a conclusion, you or anybody else, it's on you guys, right? Everyone is entitled to their own view. I just want to make sure that at least the context is out there. And I do think that's a part of the story that's important.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book. What's Killing America? Tuesday, it's officially out on Tuesday.
It is officially out on Tuesday. It's still available, obviously, for pre-order. So depending on where you buy it, it means you'll get it actually on Tuesday.
Yeah. So make the pitch to people as to why they should pick it up.
Well, they should pick it up because, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are happening right now all across the country that folks don't even recognize. They don't realize. They certainly know that something's wrong, but they don't know what's to blame, what's behind it. And part of the reason why I wrote this book was that looking city to city, there are themes. It's virtually the same policies that are responsible, I think, for an increase in crime, homelessness, drugs. Certainly when it comes to the migrant crisis, this is due to policy. On the other hand, housing, transportation, what's going on in schools, a lot of the problems are due to policy. And unless people connect the dots, you're never really going to be able to pull some of that back. I give credit to some local media, but overall, across the country, I think local media doesn't do a very good job of connecting dots. They're never going to say, hey, this piece of legislation championed by this Democrat, they're the ones responsible for it. And if you don't know that, you don't know that. I can go right now and ask someone, what is harm reduction? What is housing first? Now, these are two policies, two strategies that are being implemented that are responsible for the drug crisis and the homelessness crisis. No one knows that. People don't know what even that means. And if they are pitched it on paper, it sounds meaningful. It sounds like it could work, but in practice, it doesn't. And so I take people through issue by issue all across the country so that they can actually get a better understanding of what's going on, the motivation behind it, and then most importantly, what works and how do we start winning arguments to make these kinds of changes?
Yeah, and I think that's what's critical, is really saying, okay, we see that some of these cities are absolutely dying themselves and as a result, killing surrounding areas. But looking at, okay, what can we do? How can we move forward from here? When you look at some of these major cities, I mean, we talk a lot about Seattle, obviously, Portland, San Francisco. Are any of them beyond resuscitating?
I fear San Francisco is beyond resuscitation. I think that maybe it can come back, but it's going to be a very, very long time. I cover in the book that point where even progressives in San Francisco said, okay, this is too much. Enough is enough. They go after Chesa Boudin. They end up going after the school board. But by the time that they really woke up to what was going on, I think it was just too late. And even at the time, they were still getting resistance from media members. They were getting resistance from the activist crowd, people pretending that this group of folks were somehow conservative. There's like 7 conservatives in San Francisco. They had nothing to do with what actually happened as far as the activism goes. But we're seeing the results now. Businesses are continuously pulling out. People are leaving the city of San Francisco. Homelessness and drug use is not actually getting better. And I don't think that can turn things around. Portland is getting awfully close to that. There are parts of Philadelphia, neighborhoods like Kensington, that are getting awfully close to that. And so another motivation for this book is to ensure that we don't see any more San Franciscos. People think that just because they leave a big city that it's not going to come to them. Well, just look anywhere in Washington state and tell me that Seattle-style politics around crime, drug use, and homelessness haven't hit you in Monroe or Puyallup or Bellingham. They very clearly have.
Yeah, in Seattle, as you point out, I mean, not too far behind Portland and San Francisco if their fate if they don't turn things around this November.
Correct.
All right, Jason Rantz, the book is What's Killing America. It's out on Tuesday, available for pre-order now, just about anywhere that you normally buy books. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate everyone who goes out and pre-orders. It's an important part of getting on a bestseller list, because once I get on literally any bestseller list, I'm going to put it on my Tinder profile. So let's step it up, man.
Okay, good. Love it. All right, I'll see you at my wedding on Saturday.
I will see you on Saturday.
Delaying his book tour for my wedding. Love it. Although last time he was on, we had this debate over, I said, are you going to dance with me at my wedding? He said, no, it's totally inappropriate for a male to dance with a female at her wedding. I said, what? Is it?
That's not true, because there's usually the dollar dance where you men shove money in your dress. So
yeah,
that they can
I mean, I'm
dance
not
with
going to
you.
dirty dance with you, Jason Rantz, if you want me to back it up on the dance floor to some early 2000s R&B, but nice little classic slow dance would be just fine. All right, I'll have more on Jason's book in that conversation because we got a lot of comments. So we'll have that coming up in questions and comments. But first, if you are retired or heading toward retirement, is your portfolio positioned for a successful retirement? With the state of the economy right now, it's really important that you mitigate risk. That's why we partnered with Bulwark Capital and Zach Abraham to do a weekly segment on Thursdays on the show, which we'll have coming up tomorrow, giving financial advice. But it's also worth noting that they have a free live webinar. They do these occasionally. They've got one coming up next Thursday, the 28th, their 2023 Risk Management Strategy live webinar. It starts at 3 p.m. Pacific time, where they're going to take you through Bulwark Capital's investment and retirement planning process. Here's Zach Abraham with more on what you could learn.
We always talk about risk management. Name of our show is Know Your Risk Radio. What does risk management mean? Well, what it means is generating similar or even better returns while taking less risk, right? Generally speaking. And we'll just show you this isn't a line. We'll show you how it's worked. We'll show you how we've done that, how thinking outside the box can greatly limit our risk and actually simultaneously enhance our upside.
Yeah, so if you want to sign up for their Risk Management Strategy live webinar, you can do that at knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com. Spots are limited, so make sure that you sign up today. And again, that's happening next Thursday, the 28th at 3 p.m. All right, let's dip outside of Washington State momentarily. How about we start with Gavin Newsom? Oh, gosh. Gavin Newsom doth protest too much. I don't know what's going on with this guy. I'm kind of tired of it, but he's all over the country, making these appearances, all over cable news. He's running political advertisements about pet issues in red states. Yet he keeps saying over and over, I don't want to run for president. I don't want the job. I'm all in on Joe Biden. He did an interview on News Nation with Chris Cuomo. And Chris Cuomo is kind of calling him out on, it just seems unbelievable that you're doing all these things, but you don't want to be president.
If you really care that much about the issues, I know you say you're not running, which is unusual to put a period at it.
Yeah, exclamation
Why, if you
point.
care, why don't you run if you care?
Because I believe in this guy. Actually, you know why?
You think Joe Biden is the best the Democrats can do?
And I hope you can differentiate, because your BS meter is one of the best, because you've been around this all your life. I don't like this guy. I have deep respect, reverence for Joe Biden as a person, his character, his decency, and his capacity to do great things. That's why I'm not worthy of that conversation. This guy deserves it.
Okay, I'm not worthy of that conversation. Let's not pretend that you're humble, Gavin Newsom. But also, it bothers me that he says that anyone deserves it. Joe Biden deserves it? Deserves the presidency? No one deserves the presidency. And it just, I don't understand. So let me play before I get into what I think is happening here. This second part of the conversation where Chris Cuomo pushes him a little more about, hey, why are you doing all this bidding for Joe Biden?
But you're propping them up.
No.
And they're going to get all the big names, and then here comes Obama, and here comes, they got to prop up Biden because he can't do it himself.
No, come on. That's what campaigns are about. It's about the party. What are parties about? I mean, I know your critique of the parties, but at the end of the day, I remember Bobby Kennedy. Remember that extraordinary moment after he lost his brother? He went to the convention. He couldn't even speak. 20 minutes standing ovation. It's a very short speech. People don't even remember the speech. They remember the emotion attached to it. He said, my brother was president of the United States because of all of you, the party, the Democratic Party, that infrastructure, that passion and action that was organized around their values. I think the party matters. It now matters more than ever in relationship to selling the message of the Biden administration. Again, it's about all of us, not about one person. I know we're all romantic about the guy or gal on the white horse that's going to come save the day, the old John Wayne construct.
So there's really only two things that you could believe here. One, that this is Governor Gavin Newsom of California, completely unselfish, not self-serving, doing the loyal bidding of the Democratic Party, and that is his only motivation. Or you might believe that he's being strategic, that he is positioning himself should Biden not be able to run for a second term. And then everything he said about not wanting to be president goes out the window. And I tend to believe, number two, that he does not believe that Joe Biden is going to be able to finish a run for a second term, that he is protesting so much right now about I'm not worthy, Joe Biden deserves it, because he wants to be the one who is selected when that eventuality happens. So I still firmly believe that Joe Biden and the party recognize that Joe Biden is not going to actually finish his run for a second term, that at some point he's going to come out and say, I wanted to do it, I thought I could do it, I just can't do it. And then that is going to be the point where Gavin Newsom comes in, as he said, like a white knight, or what do you say, a white knight, like the John Wayne savior, and he's going to say, well, I said all that stuff when I was full in on Joe Biden. Now Joe Biden has taken himself out of the equation, so here I am. I just can't see any other rationale for why he's positioning himself so publicly in the way that he is. There is something else going on here. I don't believe it's like completely out of the goodness of his heart and dedication and loyalty to political party. All right, New York City really quick. So Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, he's been an interesting guy. I agree with him more and more often because he's starting to be red-pilled, and I think realize that some of the policies he supported vocally in the past are destructive, like when it comes to immigration. And now his city is being absolutely overrun by individuals who came up across the southern border illegally, who are being shipped, bossed, sometimes, New York City is working with them, sometimes it's not, into their city. And he said, let me actually play the clip we played on the show a couple weeks ago, where he's saying, essentially, this is going to ruin New York City as we know it.
We're getting no support on this national crisis, and we're receiving no support. And let me tell you something, New Yorkers. Never in my life have I had a problem that I did not see an ending to. I don't see an ending to this. I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City.
I don't have to remind you of the absolute hypocrisy of sanctuary cities who encourage these policies, think everybody else should live with these policies, now saying it's going to destroy our city when it really hits them in a big way. But, okay, he's come around to things. Let's let him come around to things. He actually is now calling out President Joe Biden because Joe Biden takes a trip to New York City and the mayor wants to meet with him on immigration, and Eric Adams gets stiffed.
President Biden is coming to the city. I am hoping that he understands this beautiful city that's the economic engine of the entire country is being saddled with a $2 billion that we spent already, $5 billion we're going to spend in this fiscal crisis, $12 billion in the next two budgetary cycles. New York don't deserve this. The asylum seekers don't deserve this. And so while he's here, I think that they should really reflect on New York City has done its part, and once we know what I'm going to do, we release a public schedule. I'm very public. Everybody knows where I am. You guys know where I am all the time. we'll release if we're going to be with the president or not.
Yeah, so it sounds like he wanted to meet with the president. And Nicole, will you double check on this, that nothing's changed in the last couple of minutes? But I don't think that there's been any change in the president's schedule and decision whether to meet with Eric Adams or not. But we need more mayors of major cities to come to these realizations. You said, no, it has not changed. No meeting. We need more of that. And I've been urging Governor Jay Inslee, Dow Constantine in King County, Mayor Bruce Harrell, to say something about what's happening at the southern border, even if it isn't impacting us to the extent it's impacting New York City right now. Because one thing that is impacting us is the fentanyl crisis and the overdose crisis. And that is directly tied to what's happening at the southern border. You'd be foolish to think that it wasn't. And so they need to, if they really care about people dying on our streets, that's another issue that they need to be vocal on and speak up about. Now, will they? Probably not, but can't blame a girl for asking. All right, eastsideweightlossclinic.com. I'll just note, some of you on the live chat were saying, Jason Rantz looks really good. Do you know why? Well, he's on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic plan. And yeah, he does look good. As soon as he popped up, I'm like, dang, you're looking good. He wanted to lose a little weight before his book tour. So good for him. Yeah, see? Now I got multiple friends on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic plan just doing their thing, eastsideweightlossclinic.com. And that's been one of the coolest things is not only have I lost a lot of weight, but seeing you guys have success on the program as well. I always show the picture of Ben and Leslie, a couple, married couple who did it together, which is a great way to do it. And we met at a couple events and we added up our collective weight loss. At the time, it was more than 100 pounds. And so hearing from you guys who have found success on the program is even better than my own personal success on the program. So if you've been thinking about it, check out eastsideweightlossclinic.com. eastsideweightlossclinic.com. You can schedule a free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team. Talk to him, see if the program is right for you. Not every weight loss program is right for every person. For instance, if you're a vegan vegetarian, this might not be the program for you. So just keep that in mind. But the 15-minute consultation will answer any questions that you have. eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Okay, let's get to questions and comments from the live stream. Should I first, Nicole, will you pull up your sad photo from last night of you slaving away in the rain? That's not it. Come on, Nicole.
Hold on. Sorry, I was trying to do that during the show.
Love.
Here we go.
So we've been trying to ship out all our merch orders, which just, they flooded in. They absolutely flooded in when we launched our store. And so we were drowning in orders. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get these out before I leave for the wedding? And Nicole stayed. What time did you leave work yesterday?
Maybe almost 9, 8:39.
And you were here at like 8:30.
Yeah,
she was here for 12 hours yesterday.
I don't even remember. I lost track.
Spent hours packaging up the remaining orders we hadn't gotten out yet.
Had to get it done.
Loading them into her car in the rain. And then people were shaming me on Facebook because I Facebooked the picture of you and said, thank you, Nicole. She's the best. I love her. And people were like, why don't you get a service to do this for you instead of poor Nicole? Listen.
Hey.
2 women, 1 podcast, and a dream, okay? Well, I guess we got Daryl, too. So 2 women, part-time Daryl, and a dream.
Yeah.
And, hey, didn't Jeff Bezos start Amazon in his garage?
I think Bill Gates. Well, probably Jeff Bezos, too.
Bill Gates?
I think Bill Gates built his computer in his garage.
Didn't Jeff Bezos start Amazon out of his house?
Probably.
Hey, we got to do it,
I think everybody starts in their garage.
We're just a small, humble podcast. So we have to ship these orders out ourselves, but we love to. And I know Nicole was writing some nice messages on some of them. We might have run
now
out
you're
of the
calling out
ability
the ones
to,
I didn't. But when she really put me on the assembly line, I couldn't write messages anymore. So if you don't have a message, it's Brandi's fault.
That's true. I was like a slave driver. Anyway, okay, Sergeant Pickles. Let's see, on the Seattle City Council and the activists who always show up to meetings have a hard time believing someone has full-time employment but can also go protest every single city council meeting. I have a hard time believing that as well. Lael says, disagree. I don't believe... Nicole, you got to put a space between the name and the first word that they type. I said Lael. Leah says, I disagree. I don't think most people in Seattle want law and order. They don't vote people in who would represent that. At the same time, though, the voter turnout's not great. And I wonder what would happen if there's 100% voter turnout. But I tend to agree. It is a matter of your options and who your choices are. And I think the Seattle City Council has become so unhinged that reasonable people don't want to run for it because they don't want to deal with the stuff like we showed you earlier on in the show. And so sometimes you're left with, a bunch of bad choices and you're like, what do I do from here? A bunch of people who all want to see, soft on crime policies. But I agree. Sometimes I maybe expect too much out of Seattle voters that they should believe what I believe. And if they don't, then they're just silly. But we'll see what happens in November. All right. Camino Island Drones says, I haven't voted in 46 years. I registered this year. Oh my gosh, 46 years. I met a guy at a meet and greet the other day who was like, I'm not registered to vote. I was like, oh, I can get you registered right now. And he's like, nah, that's okay. I was like, what? Why?
Well, now it's automatic, I think. I think you're automatically, when you get your driver's license or something, for younger people.
But you can opt out, yeah. Jenny says, would like you to also look at Snohomish County. Everett is so bad. Thank you for all you're doing. Yeah, Everett is rough, although Everett did have some emphasis with officers who went out and actually arrested people who wouldn't accept services for drug use.
Yeah, and they're doing better in some parts, but there's Casino Road, I think, that's still a mess. But I think they actually have some teamwork going on there, and they're tackling it to some extent, whereas Seattle, it seems like everybody wants different things and nobody wants to actually help people.
Is that where the women of the night are?
I believe
Casino Road?
I believe so. That's where all the gunshots are. That's where all the women of the night are. That's where all of my Ring doorbell alerts are located.
Oh no. Well, I saw a video on social media the other day. It was like put on like the Seattle looks like SH, you know what? And it had a woman of the night, apparently a woman of the day, who was doing a striptease dance on a street sign pole. Yeah, you use what's in front of you, right?
There you go.
All right. George Pruden said, the activists are so loud in their echo chamber, they can't hear other opinions. Who funds them? Quote, follow the money. Yeah, a lot of them are Shama Sawant activists who she, will get the signs for, print the signs for. That's why they always have the red signs that look exactly the same. I didn't see it at this meeting, and they, get all these alerts to come out and to be at these council meetings. And credit to them for being organized in that regard. She's good at getting people to pack council chambers and to cheer for her and boo or hiss at the other people. Speaking of the hissing, did you put in that comment from Daryl?
I did.
Where is it?
You might have gone past.
I don't know where it was, but the activists speak parcel tongue. Very impressive. Nicole's like, what's parcel tongue? It's the
Harry
on Harry Potter when someone can talk to snakes.
Got it.
All right, Jackie says council meetings should be in the evening or at least a mix of evening and afternoon meetings so the average working person can show up. I know it's not convenient for the council members, but they're elected public servants and should be getting feedback from more than just those able to attend a 2 p.m. meeting. It always seems the big important votes in their middle of the day. I couldn't agree more. And a lot of other cities have their council meetings at night. And granted, some cities aren't full-time council members. So you have council members who have a day job and then they have to be council members at night. So that is probably more so why they have them in the evening. But I do agree that if you really want to hear from a wide range of Seattleites, you need to account for the fact that a lot of them are working 9-to-5 jobs and they can't take time off. If you care about workers and you want to hear from them.
2 o'clock is also typically after lunch.
Right.
So
it can't even come on their lunch
lunchtime,
break, right? That's ridiculous. Okay, Michelle says, please let me know next time these votes take place. I'll happily show up to any of those meetings and show them firsthand what's happening. Unbelievable. On the on the Homelessness Zero program folding, Sergeant Pickle says, no disrespect, Brandi, but this program failing belongs in a segment called Entirely Predictable. Yeah, sometimes when I say unpredictable, it's meant to be a little bit of a joke. Matthew says, Partnership for Zero, well named as it produced zero results. Very true, aptly named in hindsight. Independent Men United said it's money laundering, like public education.
I mean, they did fund a bunch of jobs that they say that they're going to have to lay off people now, but I guess that's where all the money went, right? Just to the jobs that were unsuccessfully executed.
So now they're turning the homelessness industrial complex into a jobs program. What did we say on the show last week when we pointed out that Governor Jay Inslee's right-of-way initiative basically amounts to $1.2 million per person to get them out of homelessness? And his argument was, we're paying these people to do this work.
I'm paying
he said, I'm paying these people to do this work. And I pay them well. You don't pay them jack, Governor. We pay them. And it's work they shouldn't even have to do if not for you allowing this situation to get so bad over the last 11 years. It's a vicious cycle. It's crazy. Oh, give us our money back. Please give us our money back. One more comment before we get to today's wedding advice, which is from Matt Gilbert. Vicky says, Brandi, we're family. We're family. We had a great experience with John Applegate from First Mark Insurance. Oh, we're family. We're members of the First Mark family. I was like, is this a long lost cousin of mine, Vicky? She said, everything that has been said about First Mark is true. The attention and focus we received from John was surprising. He helped us get better coverage, but also reviewed one policy he told us to keep. Thank you so much for sharing your experience that made us decide to reach out and take the challenge. Love it. Love it. Yeah, they have great service. And it's we just forget about it now. I don't have to worry about, my insurance, what am I doing with it this year? Is it good enough? Is it keeping up? They're making sure it's keeping up with our lives. After Mike and I get married, we're going to go back and they're going to do a little assessment for us. We don't have to do jack. All right, wedding advice. We'll end with this before our sanity check, which is depressing today. Matt Gilbert says, marriage advice, don't keep score. You're on the same side. When there are things that Mike does that annoys you, make sure to use I statements instead of you statement. Something tells me Matt Gilbert and his wife Julie has had to have some come to Jesus moments with him, and he would like her to use I statements more than you statements. No, I'm just kidding. And thank you, Matt Gilbert, by the way, for the thoughtful wedding gift. He sent us some rubs, not rubs like, rubs. He sent us rubs
meat
for meat
rubs.
because he's big into the maybe not Traegering, but smoking and
green
all
egg.
that.
I think
Yeah, he's got the green egg. Oh, I'm sorry, I put you in the Traeger camp. So we're very much I'm looking forward to Mike cooking for me with those. That was very, very nice of you. All right, great questions and comments today. Per the usual. Let's get to our closing sanity check. Some really sad news. I think some of the most devastating stories about the fentanyl crisis have to do with innocent people who are impacted by it. So there was a trio of really horrifying headlines. Dad woke up to his 2-year-old girl dead in his arms from a fentanyl exposure. In Puyallup, an infant and a 3-year-old brother were hospitalized. The infant was found unconscious with foil in her mouth. This is the headline from Fox 13. Child dies, 2 other hospitalized after separate fentanyl exposures in Pierce County. And then there was a third story that had to do with a 12-year-old Bethel student who overdosed at school from a fentanyl-laced Xanax pill. A 12-year-old. The school nurse ended up having to revive him, save him with naloxone. Here's Pierce County Sergeant Darren Moss with Fox 13.
The nurse had to do CPR. That's not normal. Kids should not be overdosing in schools. If you think you're using heroin, you're wrong. It's cut with fentanyl. If you think you're using methamphetamine, you're wrong. It's cut with fentanyl. It happens every day. It happens all over the country. It's happening right here in Pierce County, and we all need to do something about it.
And as he said, this isn't normal. This isn't normal. It's not just people on 3rd Avenue in Seattle. It's not just adults who've struggled with drug use their whole lives. It's everyone from all facets of life. We're talking about a 12-year-old who overdoses at school. The school nurse used to be reserved for things like a headache. You'd go in there and they'd put a cold pack on your forehead and call your parents. School nurses never had to resuscitate people from fentanyl overdoses. This is not normal. We can't treat it as if it's normal. And we certainly cannot keep doing what we've been doing and expect different results. That would be the definition of insanity. All right, that has been it for today's episode of Undivided. If you want Nicole to make more late-night trips to mail your packages, make sure you shop our merch store at undividedpod.com. Undividedpod.com. We will be restocking some of the larger T-shirt sizes. I have to note, wait, Nicole, stay on that screen. I'm going to go put a hat on quick. Stay here. There's going to be a brief 20-second pause. Nicole, why don't you...
20 seconds?
Tell them a story.
Well, actually, 2 Ladies Midwest Adventures was hoping to hear more about my cat, so I could just make it a a 20-second cat show here if I needed to, but they're doing good. Brooks and Allie, they're doing well. They're little monsters, high maintenance cats, the most high maintenance cats I know of. And here's Brandi Kruse.
Ha ha! Look at my hat. Can you see it? It says, make common sense great again. How many Seattleites do you think I'm going to trigger with this thing from a distance? Look at this thing. Make common sense great again. It's got our website on it. Good. Available today. I need to bend the little thing a little bit. I just took it out of the box as it is. Available now at undividedpod.com. All right, that has been it for today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. If you have not become a subscriber to the show already, please do so. You can sign up at undividedpod.com for $5 a month. And when you do, you get a $5 promo code to shop our merch store. So basically, it makes the first month free. Isn't that exciting? All right, we'll see you back on the live show tomorrow at noon.